We're live.
Welcome everybody to our financial committee. Today is January 22nd at 7 p.m. Could I have a motion to adopt today's agenda? First, roll call, please. Mr. Bernard.
Janie?
Here.
Ms. Brewer?
Here.
Mr. Fisher?
Here.
Ms. Kramer?
Here.
Mr. Michelson?
Here. All members are present. Do we have a motion? I put forth a motion to adopt today's agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Does anybody want to add anything?
The second was Ms. Kramer, is that correct?
Sure.
It's on the website.
Next to each other, I don't
I
necessarily
know, we're
hear.
not doing you any favors.
Sorry.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we have to adopt the Robert's Rules of Order. Put forth a motion to adopt Robert's Rules of Order. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. Did anybody have a chance to look at last minutes from last meeting from our November 27th?
I'll make a motion to pass.
Do I have a sec? I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so there was a first discussion was going to turn over to Mr. Primrose to understand the year end of our finances, at least where it's up to. Do you have an update?
I do. Sorry, give me 1 second here. Yes, okay, so year-end update, year-end finance. Okay, so year-end finance is well underway. Basically, most of the paper has been printed. Most of the reports have been pulled. Now we just have to do one of these, which is only 15 pages long, that I have to put together for year end. That effort started today, of those final touches, so to speak. But otherwise, everything is running extremely smoothly, even though we don't have Ms. Bergen, but Ms. Johnson has really stepped up and shown how incredibly. Ms. Johnson is an invaluable part of our staff. I certainly have my part, but it's a lot easier because I've done this before. I can't imagine having to do this by myself, not knowing, obviously, not knowing what I know from doing this in a previous year. But Ms. Johnson has been extremely helpful, making sure that POs are where they're supposed to be, opening up new. I mean, it's just all accounting stuff that needs to be done, and lots of fun. But essentially, that should be. I don't want to give it like 2 weeks. I think we closed out by the second full week of February last year. I think that's a fairly. I think that's a totally attainable goal. I think we can do it. It's just a matter of, again, taking all of the 769 pages that I printed out today, which we must print out, even though the state of Ohio requires us to submit everything electronically, but we must have an entire book of information sitting, waiting for anyone who might come and ask us for our financials, that we can just say, here you go. Yes, lots of fun. But other than that,
Let me know when you're done. I'll submit it for you.
thanks. Other than that, year end is almost at a completion stage. Again, it's called in the UAN software that we file with. There is one section called notes, which is what I have to file, and everything is done manually. And it's a lot of it is updating metrics that are already existing, making sure that definitions are still correct and still relevant. And the biggest piece there is adding any accrued debt that we have made over the last year, which I believe is reserved to the F-150 purchase and the WeHe. We didn't take any debt on when we finished WeHe. We already have Canterbury on there. I think we have to compensate for the expected, meaning any contracts that we signed but we didn't initiate. Then we have to list them. So that would be Hamel, right? Hamel, I think we already started our application with OPWC for that.
Correct.
Yeah, so Hamel has to be on there, and Elbrook we ended up getting more than last year. So just it's updating where things are now, this year compared to last year with road projects. Coordinating all that with OPWC is not all that challenging, which is time consuming. So,
Just a request from people out there. We,
Yes.
and maybe me, and some other people might understand every line on your reports. If you see a line there that you think a regular, simple person won't understand, could you put more of an explanation or a footnote to it?
you're talking about the year-end notes.
Or any part of our finance reports that you're gonna be doing, especially on the year end, if there are parts there that you think a regular amateur person would not understand, is it possible to put more explanation?
How long would you like the financial report to be?
Well, I'd be happy to actually sit down with you and just have a couple suggestions on like how to make them a little bit more user-friendly.
Yes.
Readable.
Love it. Let's do it.
Great.
I'm all in.
Yes.
I will say this is something I did with every council member throughout my short tenure here, is that whenever we're going through budgets, whenever we're going through appropriations, I've sat down with Sharon, I sat down with David, I sat down with the mayor. I will go line by line and explain to you everything that there is to know. It is unbelievably enthralling. I think Sharon, I kept you at least an hour and you were like, why? But she knows this stuff better, you know, I mean, she's been here longer, but there's just a lot of information. And the more you get that explanation, then information is power. You will know much more of kind of what's going on. I mean, I can simplify it, but it requires so much explanation that it's like the financial report is very long. And all of that is mostly source information. The most important, pages I can emphasize a little better. I think we can bring them forward.
It's technical report.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the
I
year
think
end.
Yeah.
That's the year. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm happy to sit down with, because I think there's even a way to just, high level key points on a summary page that we need to know.
I'm all
Or
in.
even like, I think I had talked to you about this, like on the revenue and expense side, there's not a total, just doing a quick total at the bottom, so we don't have to get into.
How our rotation would work and what it's necessary for us to start flipping vehicles. And do we have enough vehicles, too little vehicles, and all that? So, Mr. Crittenden, if you are ready, could you?
Yes, I am. I just realized this is missing some information. Apologize. There was unfortunately some latecomers in here, but I can fill those in as well. Not everyone. It was just the Ford Focus is the one that was sitting on my desk, and I actually just scanned that in this morning. But the rest, and that honestly, that's the least interesting of all of the cars, just because it's so old. It's not really worth it to sell. It doesn't cost us anything to keep. So we held on to that car. But we can go through, again, I apologize, it's not sorted by department, it's really supported by the need for replacement. This is based on the American Public Works Association recommendation of best practices, what's called responsible vehicle maintenance, responsible fleet maintenance, and fleet replacement. So I instituted this last year at the beginning of the year when we were talking about replacing a car, or I think it was at that point we were talking about the F-150 purchase for the police department. And I wanted to see data. What is our metric for why we're replacing a car? Is it because we've decided 5 years is best practice and that's what we do? Or is it because there is a data-driven model why that makes the most sense? So I did some research and I looked at the American Public Works. They give I apologize, I should have printed out this as well. But they give a really nice scorecard for every vehicle. And this is something that I handed out to Chief, I handed it out to the service department, and I handed it out, actually it was just the Chief and Service Department because they're the only ones who really have any vehicles. We do have this admin Ford Focus, which for all intents and purposes, the police department uses that much more than we do. I think it's available to us if we need. We just can't turn on the lights, right? You sure? Cannot turn off the lights. I'm sorry, just making sure. It's got the blue lights, that's the police lights. Anyway, just being silly. Fine. So if we go through, basically we see the police cars and the service cars have different tags. So depending on their use, we have different tags for them. The ones that have name tags, that's because they're just most easily identifiable by those who drive them. The ones that have number tags, those are rotated. So the K9 has a specific car. The Dodge Avenger, that's kind of a limbo car at this point. That my understanding is that that was supposed to be or is going to be sold. I'm not sure what the status is on that. The assistant chief has a car. The chief has a car, and the Ford, again, that admin Ford Focus. I call it admin, but it's really, I mean, it's got like 40,000 miles on it, so it's very. I apologize. I do have that. I can tell you how many miles exact. Has 52,573 miles. If anyone wants to keep score at home. So that car, again, the determination for replacement is based on how many years of service it has. Police SUVs are estimated to last between 5 and 7 years. Any heavy or medium trucks are expected to last 10 to 12 years. Police cruisers that are not SUVs are expected to last no more than 5 years. So they get a point for every year. They also get, if it's a police car, it gets 5 points if it works. I'm sorry, it gets 4 points. If it is used in snow removal, it gets 5 points off the bat. Again, this is because the type of use that they get is so constant and it is so much harder. I mean, you look at that 216 model at the top of the list, it's got 29,500 hours on it with 83,000 miles. And you think, well, a Ford with 83,000 miles, okay, it's probably got another 100,000 miles in it, probably, maybe another 50. 29,500 miles has the equivalent of 750,000 miles on a car. That is an insane number. Now, it happens to be that 216 has been very reliable for us, but real-time equivalency, the number that they give is that 1 hour is worth about 35 miles. 1 hour of just sitting there running, idling is worth 35 miles. So that's where they get that number. 250. It's each point. Each one gets 250 miles. 250 hours gives you a point, and that's where those 147 points come from. Again, that's 29,500, approximately 750,000 miles. So again, that car, in my estimation, based on my metrics that I see from the American Public Works Association, that should be replaced. The Model 118 is getting to the end of its useful life. We're in 2024, and that is a 6-year-old car. Now, it's only got 6,000 hours and 40,000 miles on it, but it has had extensive repairs, which the 118 is a Dodge. For anyone who owns a Dodge, I apologize. Life must be very difficult. No, I mean, it's really crazy. Like, we've seen major reliability issues with Dodges, and it's something that when I discussed with, I think I don't remember his name, he's in Newtown. He's their fleet, Sean Breen, is that his name? McBreen? Can't remember his name. Anyway, he's like one of the big fleet purchasers throughout Hamilton County. He works with agencies to help them get into this lower cost program, which doesn't necessarily work for us. We've looked into it, but he asked me, did you buy the extended warranty with that Dodge, also known as just the owner's policy, because they're just so notoriously unreliable. And I kind of smiled and, thankfully it didn't cost us anything. But over the years, it has had significant repairs, and the last year has had, again, significant repairs. So the recommendation to replace is once a vehicle hits, I think it gets a certain amount of points for if it's within 20% of replacement cost is its annual maintenance. So then it gets 1 point. If it's 30%, it gets 2 points. If it's 40%, it gets 3 points. Again, it just goes up. And of course, the understanding there is that you're going to spend 20% in maintenance costs or maintenance and repair costs compared to the replacement of the vehicle. Well, in 5 years, you've paid for the replacement of that vehicle. Typical cost, what we built out is a 5-year loan. So you're either paying it in a loan or you're paying it in repairs. And I think Chief Campbell can attest to when you have 1 or 2 cars in the shop at a time, that is unacceptable. We cannot have old cars that are, 1, 2, 3, excuse me, 1 or 2 or 3 points, so to speak, on that maintenance and repair. We're trying to save money, right? But what do you save a penny to spend a dollar, right? That's the kind of calculation. So on 216 and 118, those are cars, again, replacement I believe is at 42. That's where it's recommended to replace in the next fiscal year. So 118 definitely qualifies for next year. I never got the hours last year when I implemented this policy. Again, it was a new policy, and I didn't know all of the things that I know now about both Dodges and Fords, that they all track hours. Based on miles, it didn't qualify for replacement last year, but based on hours run, 216, that's the top of your list, absolutely qualifies for a replacement this year. The next in line is 122, which is kind of surprising because that's actually our newest police vehicle. And again, it's over there. It's because of the amount of hours. I mean, it's being used because it's a great car. I think it's one of the cars that a lot of the guys like. I mean, I know a few of the guys who I've seen drive it. That's the F-150 pickup that's with the stealth graphics. So that one, again, a 30 is not one that qualifies for replacement. 42 is where it gets there, and another year or two, it definitely, it definitely can make it, and it should last another 4 years because we're in 2020. I'm sorry, it should last another 3 years. We're in 2024 now. Based on the point scale, that should not have any issues.
Eric, can I jump in real quick?
Absolutely, please.
On that vehicle, that truck too, I think that accident that it was in, I saw pictures of it in the hospital,
Right,
and I probably shouldn't have seen pictures of it because
didn't
it
help.
was disastrous. I'm
Right.
surprised that it wasn't totaled out,
Yeah.
so I think that might.
Yeah, I mean, that for sure contributes to the high score. I did forget about that incident because that's one of our newer cars. But that was a significant incident. It was not at no, it was at no cost to the village. But again, it gets points for any of these kinds of incidents that it experiences. It gets fewer points
That's
if you
vehicle
pay for it,
122.
if you don't pay for it. I'm sorry,
That's vehicle.
that was vehicle 122. Yeah,
Quick question on the
yeah.
point you just made, that 122, like the guys like driving it, so it's used a lot.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you can answer this. Is there like not a standard rotation you have to move through? So our newest car is the one we're having to replace right away.
No, that's, yeah.
Or is there, or like maybe there's reasons, I don't know, I'm just looking
So
for more
the
education
the
on it.
reasons are, is, a big one is unit 118. So today, this year, I think we spent about close to $3,000 on 118, which is a third of my maintenance budget for all vehicles. That car consumed that much already. And I learned today it's reheating. So I watched an officer take their equipment out of it because it's still overheating to put in to the F-150 because it was available. So part of it is it's dominoes, is when one car goes down, it puts stress and it puts more use on the other cars.
Sure.
So that's the problem we have. When we have a chronic car, like 118, if you look at the miles are low because it's in the shop a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's traveling behind the tow truck most of the time. Those miles don't count.
Yeah.
But it affects all the other cars.
Sure, yeah, I just wanted to make sure, maybe it was like a turn of phrase used, but just that's just
Yeah, no, I was
pure personal
Answer
preference
your
what car I'm
question, no.
using.
Officers are assigned to cars.
Yeah.
And what happens a lot is there's cars that are frequently broken.
Sure.
Jump into the other one.
Yeah, totally.
One of them is reserved for the supervisor, so it basically leaves the
122.
truck or 216 or 2016.
So yeah, so you see 216 has the most hours, right? That's the one. That's the default, right? As I understand. Again, any slip like that, like I'm not really like I'm not on the ground. I'm like, yeah, I see it. It's a great car. I remember Russ used to drive that. So okay, but anyway,
So we have 8 police vehicles, is that correct?
We have 4 marked police vehicles,
Uh-huh.
plus the K9 vehicle, which is reserved just for the K9. The back is just a metal kennel, solid floor. And then the vehicle I use and the vehicle Reed uses, I don't think his emergency equipment is in. We're still waiting for that. But they're unmarked but have emergency equipment.
And we don't use those to patrol, those are
We don't use them for patrol, but we use them for, if we're watching for people, it's good to have something that's not marked up. So we can do that. And then depending on the type of incidents, we respond to calls also. So I have emergency equipment, lockout equipment, first aid equipment in my vehicle that I can use. So it supplements what the officer has.
When you're off duty, you use that to respond, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, keep that.
Okay. And is that normal to have that many unmarked cars or,
Too.
yeah, for a village of this size or police force of this size?
It's comparable to what Wyoming uses. Reed reached out to them and had conversations with what their fleet is, and we actually have fewer vehicles than them.
Yeah, they're
Well,
almost
we're much
double.
smaller.
We're about half the size in population.
Yeah.
And we're about half the size in vehicles and police department size.
Yeah.
If something you wanted to get into more, might be something more tuned for executive, you know, the chair, so you can bring it up whenever you like.
So one thing, I understood
Purely
back
financial
when we discussed about Reed's car, that it was gonna be a car that could be used for the fleet also.
Yeah.
So it's not his private car only, it's meant that we could switch it out if we use it. It's supposed to be able to have magnets on the side. of it
I have
before.
magnets in mine. You're not legally allowed to do traffic enforcement unless the vehicle is marked in your uniform. So if we need to, we have magnets that save off Manor Police that go on the doors and we can use it. I've had bad guys in my car before under arrest. But it doesn't have the cage and all the normal equipment. It has what I need. And Reed needs that as well when we're called in for serious incidents. One night, there was a shooting that occurred on the dead end of Stover. Then when UDF was still open, they got robbed. And then somebody came back and shot again at UDF. And I'm responding in to assist. I'm in my private vehicle. I got pulled over on the way. I had to explain the situation, but ideally, you want all your equipment that you need to go straight to the scene. Do it with lights and sirens, get straight to the scene to assist with that. Can't speak to while I was away, but previously it was happening monthly. We didn't come in.
From off duty.
Okay, Chief, explain, make sure I understand this. So, okay, Captain Reed, he doesn't use his car when he's here on duty. He uses one of our service cars that
No.
we use every day.
Um,
He uses his car that's unmarked,
He does.
but you said you can't really use it.
For traffic
Patrol,
stops.
yes.
But
So,
an example I'll give you is he's in his unmarked car. He's heading to look at some information from another agency, and he sees an assault happen right in front of Timor. So he's able to call that in and act because he's, you don't want to be in your personal vehicle with your license plates on display if you have to go out and insert yourself into a situation. And a store worker and his eye socket broke in, and it all happened right in front of Reed in the unmarked car. So, those types of things, we could still respond to that. When we get calls where people are maybe looking into vehicles or looking into yards, I always go to that in my unmarked car because I can spot people and call in versus them looking for a license plate. Let our guys know where to go. It's a big benefit to us.
so it's better to have it unmarked than it is to have it outfitted?
Better to have his options, yeah. He has light package and sirens ordered for that, just like is in my car. But it's not on display. It's there when needed.
And he takes that one home.
Yes.
And on the F-50, clarify that for me. Did you say, or maybe you said, $3,000 in the maintenance already?
That was on the Dodge Unit 118.
The second red one.
Yeah.
And that's in 2024.
Oh, the red one.
So far,
No,
since January 1.
So,
No, the $3,000 next.
oh, that's in 2024, yeah.
That's on, okay. I misunderstood that one. Okay,
And we're gonna
that's
have
the
to send it
Dodge.
back this week.
So probably the make of the vehicle would be helpful.
Yeah, I realize that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you that.
Same note on here.
It's one of those things that I'm like, yeah, I know what all these cars
Why
are.
don't you just bring the vehicles in?
Uh-huh.
Line up out front, let us sit
You
in
want
that
a brand
light.
new police
Move the
car?
lights real quick.
Okay, so we don't have a warranty on that one. Now I understand, because I was
Yeah, no,
wondering why we didn't have a warranty on the 2022.
Right, no, there's no,
Okay.
I don't, I mean, I don't know what the warranties are on the newer cars. I don't have that information, but, the old ones definitely do not have warranties.
Yeah, okay.
And I know you said there's no cost to having the Focus, the
Yeah.
2008 Focus, but isn't there insurance costs for that vehicle? And I know my old car, like, I got way more.
It's under our fleet plan,
So
so
there's
it's
not
just
an-
included.
They give us up to a certain number of cars.
Okay, so they don't base it off of like the age, the make, any of that, it's just
Correct.
flat coverage, okay. So it wouldn't necessarily be a savings for that.
What is,
That's convenient.
well,
Yeah.
I'm sure they, I'm
We
sure
can
they
have more
cheat.
cars.
Yeah.
They know that they're insuring police departments, you know, they're expecting a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, when 122 was hit, it was like head-on collision, and the entire front end of the car with the truck was just polarized.
Was that
I mean,
accident
it was,
happen on Elbrook?
that happened all over again.
Yeah.
Right by the Amarillo border, when somebody had just stolen a car from around the corner.
It
No,
was,
it was a shooting.
it was a stolen car, and they did a shooting.
Are the only two Dodges, the 118 and then the Avenger?
120 is also a Dodge.
Is it our,
No, that's not correct.
120,
120 is the F-150.
122 is the F-150.
122, I think, is Reed's F-150.
That doesn't have a tag. 122 is the, because we purchased that F-150 in 23.
120 is the Ram truck.
120 is the Ram
Okay,
truck. Yeah. It's confusing because 122 technically is a 2020.
Exactly, okay, yeah.
That's going on, and then I can fill those in. I fill in information as I was receiving it, so not everything was put in here, and I can go pull the titles and all that stuff, but this was just to open up the topic.
is it based off of the information you were saying about Dodges, is it the mindset that we will move away from purchasing Dodges in the future,
Yes,
period?
that is my recommendation as the fiscal officer.
Yes, very much.
So the funny thing is, 216 had a companion car, 116, which got wrecked.
Oh.
Both of those vehicles have been exemplary in terms of their service to us. I don't know why we wouldn't buy Fords going forward.
The only question is moving forward, and this is something that Captain Reed has mentioned to me, is whether to choose an Explorer or an F-150. Generally, F-150s have been cheaper and more readily available, though things are changing. I don't know how much anyone else has paid attention to the used car market, but there are some options for Explorers now that did not exist a year ago. I mean, it's like, it's so much cheaper, and you don't have to wait. It's a totally different world.
Yeah, some of these purchases were made based on what was available. So we had a vehicle get crashed, and you just can't go to a lot and get them. They're normally ordered a year in advance. And the cars we have found were agencies ordered them and then didn't pick them up, or the dealership ordered extras, knowing there'd be a need for them. So some of these were, we went from an SUV to a pickup truck because that's all we could find. When we find something that's actionable, we kind of get impatient because we know there's other people that are circling, looking for that as well.
So
Is
sorry.
is this going through all of this and identifying these top two that are in red? Is this trying to kind of get ahead of that curve of where we know that we are
Yes.
in the market? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we're really in the market for two.
Yeah.
We're in the market for two. We can afford one.
Okay.
Anything more than that is dipping into reserve funds.
Yeah.
But again, we are paying the money in maintenance, and we're gonna pay over a year close to, I mean, if this Dodge Durango continues to be a problem, which, I mean, the estimates that we're seeing, if that continues, my recommendation is that we should look at replacing that as well. But I also understand that replacing two in a year is not something that we want to be in the practice of doing.
We didn't replace any of them last year, right? We placed two of them in 2022, am I wrong? Or did we buy Reeds last year?
We bought Reeds last year.
So we're supposed to buy one cruiser every year, is my understanding.
Correct.
That would be our best practice.
That would be the
Best
best
practice,
practice.
yeah.
So we would always have out of 4, a new one.
Right. But we don't have, do we have it in the budget this year?
No, definitely not. We
What
have
is
it?
one in the budget.
What does it cost to put a cage in a car?
You have to, I'm saying it's $17,000 to outfit a car.
The only reason I ask is because
It's-
I think Mr. Fisher, under the same assumption I was, I believe I was on the executive committee at the time when we were talking about it, was that Captain Reed's car could be flipped back and forth, and it sounds like it doesn't have a cage, so if, maybe we can't do 2 cars this year, but if we could put a cage at a lesser cost in Reed's car, that, it's still gonna be his primary, not on the road, but we'll have it available to actually be able to put people in, so we don't have to call another car in, put people, so it could be used a little bit more serviceably instead of less so. Maybe it's an option for, lesser costs
I
and
can't
things
think
like
of
that.
that.
Yeah, I don't know, what Reed had planned specifically. You can operate cars that don't have transport cages in them. An example is the K9. When Forrest is working with his partner, if they arrest somebody, that other person is who's transporting.
Well, sure, but I mean, if 3 of our, how many police cars can't be used to transport people, like, that's a pretty large percentage for such a small village. Yeah, I think, for cost savings, for being able to rotate vehicles more efficiently, use them more evenly throughout, smooth the butter out. It's just an idea for maybe a lower cost option. Instead of 2 new cars, maybe we can do 1 car and outfit the car with the cage. Just so it can be used more serviceably, so it can, be on patrol by itself and not rely on a secondary car to, really you would need 2 cars at that point to do 1 job.
We're calling, for instance.
So
What's the story with the Avenger? What is that used for?
It was a supervisor car, and it was not reliable. So we looked at replacing that with something that we won't have to throw money at year after year. Reed and myself do a lot of traveling on behalf of the village, where it doesn't make sense to take a market cruiser out of service to do. I know on Friday he spent a couple hours at another agency talking about potential candidates, and it doesn't make sense if we're trying to rest and keep our market patrol vehicles running, that we use cars like that to do that, or go to training in Columbus, or go to conferences out of town.
So you don't
So
take
the
your
Avenger
police.
is where now? What's the Avenger? It's marked car?
No, it's just a unmarked gray car.
So
I wouldn't.
that's
It's,
another car that we have sitting around.
that's a car that the village has access to.
So keep in mind too, 218 was just sold. 218 was the other Durango.
Yeah, it's because it was sold.
Yeah.
So we're selling the Avenger, but we're not replacing that, because that was Reed's car, correct?
Yeah, there's no plans to replace that.
I would be curious, as Zach mentioned, the cost to outfit Captain Reed's car, to have more flexibility with that.
My opinion, if we weren't, so what some agencies do is they'll get a car, and they'll use it for a year or 2, and then convert it to a market patrol car. If we weren't gonna convert it to a full-time use market patrol car, I don't think it'd be worth the cost. Because we're not simply just putting in the cage, there's a lot of wiring that has to accompany that, a lot of work that has to accompany that. And I don't think that we would get the value out of it. To eliminate being able to use it, I don't know, on rainy day to drive 4 officers there in one vehicle, because it has back seats. To put a cage in, that might be used only occasionally. The cost is pretty significant.
So if you were in a situation where Reed has a bad guy that he needs to transport, regardless of cage or whatever in his vehicle or whatever. To a certain extent, he could transport that person still, no?
We wouldn't do it,
You wouldn't do it, okay,
no.
okay.
But who's the partner, whoever they're working with,
Mhm.
you know, the other unit on duty
Mhm.
would be the one that transports.
Got it, okay.
There's always two people on duty.
What's the most amount of people or vehicles, I guess, in use that we have on any shift?
The most that could be used, I've seen 5 cars being used. We've had 2 on duty, we had a marked car at the school. We had a car that was doing either the OVI patrol, or doing the detail at the synagogue. And if we have anybody at court, there's times where all the cars are gone and used. And then people have driven the Avenger or the white car to court. It just depends on how it's scheduled.
But on average, how many are we using?
Typically, it's 2 plus a canine.
2 plus the canine,
Yeah.
if 4 is on shift.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's another question, just that we understand over here. When you do detail at the synagogue or at the school, they pay for the detail, correct? Are they paying anything into the usage of the car or just for the detail?
They're paying just for the detail. My opinion, because we want to work with the school, we want to make that available to them, it's well worth it because we have another full-time officer in the village that is available to respond to emergencies, but is here being paid for without our tax dollars.
But the tax dollars is paying for the car.
Right, the tax dollars is getting a full-time officer for just the price of the operation of the car for the day.
Is it always a Gulf Manor police, it's not always a Gulf Manor police officer either, a lot of times,
Yeah.
at least, I'm not frequently Gulf Manor, but Amberley is
Yeah.
all
Sure.
over, so it's not necessarily just Gulf Manor's tax dollars on the cards, right?
Well,
Whoever.
most of the school is switched. It's 2 days a week. Is us, and the rest of the week is Amberley. On the synagogue over the weekends, a lot of times it's that's only over the weekend because not all the officers want to take the shifts.
So you said if we order a car, it could take a year to get it?
Usually what happens is they order in the fall, September, October, and then delivery starts in March, sometimes like that. I know we're constantly sourcing just to see if things are available. It's not ideal when you order the car, you can get it exactly as you want it. You can order it so that the keys are all keyed the same. So my key works on that car, works on that car, works on that car. When you take one off of a lot, either somebody didn't pick it up or it's an extra order, you get what you get. In a perfect world, we'd be ordering a car every fall. And then in 5 years, they all have the same key frequency and they'd all be identical.
Yeah, I'm
But
thinking,
it's just, a lot of things come up that interrupt that.
so if we order it in the fall and we don't get it, then we don't pay for it till next year, right? So we could put it in the budget for next year?
I mean, absolutely. We order something in September and it doesn't get delivered till January, as long as they don't require payment. I think what we saw with the F-150 is that they did require payment before delivery. Is that correct? No, it was after
I
delivery.
think one we actually got before the.
That was that F-150 we got, but that was an exception. Typically, I think with the US bank loans, you're paying money before you get anything.
We don't lease them anymore? We lease
They
them?
call it a lease. It's very interesting. I don't know why it's called leasing, because we
Okay.
own it at the end of the lease terms.
Ford sells it to you for $1.
What was that?
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Ford, if you do a lease with Ford, it's typically 3 years, 3 annual payments.
Right.
And at the end of 1 year, they just charge you $1.
Right.
And it's considered your property.
Right, so I don't know what the legal terms are with that, why it's called a lease, but we had a lease, that we actually had a real lease, which we bought that vehicle off the lease, but generally, we are purchasing these vehicles, they are property of the village.
The 216, I think, was the last one we did, the Ford municipal lease.
Yeah.
I think that's the last time we did it. Since then, we've done, I think, US Bank for all of them, is that correct?
Mhm.
Except for Captain Reed's vehicle, that one we did Ford.
Okay.
And they gave us low interest rate too, didn't they?
Well, the way that it worked, it was, you're paying so much up front, so we ended up financing only 2/3 of it. And it was a higher interest rate for 2/3 instead of the full interest rate for the full amount. Which, I mean, technically, you're still paying higher interest, but it's less money, but that was the way they structured it. It's a lot easier to deal with Ford than it is to deal with US Bank.
Oh,
They are the ones selling the cars. They want you to buy it. But
okay.
I mean, I think the cost increase was like maybe $600 or $800 for the cost of the loan
Through Ford.
to go through Ford, yeah.
So what I'm hearing, to streamline this process, to make sure that we are not in a position to, disadvantage our police force, is to have like a systematic rotation of these vehicles with a preferred vendor being Ford for not only the vehicle, but the financing.
I shop around, whoever's cheaper,
Sure.
if US Bank is getting that much better of an interest rate and Ford can't match it, I'm gonna recommend US Bank.
Yeah,
Ford was easier to work with, but it wasn't that much higher.
okay.
Is there a specific recommendation that you'd like us to have, like to consider to pass to council, or is this just more informational?
This is mostly informational. I mean, the goal is, again, my recommendation is to replace definitely one, at least consider replacing the second, understanding that we're gonna pay it in repairs anyway. I mean, like Stewart Tire, who does all of our work, has already informed us that it's going to cost more for 118, that we haven't seen those bills yet. We've already spent $3,000
Sure.
on the car. So, that car has a history. It's not as bad as 218. 218, they called it, they had the ghost, right? That it would just, stuff would stop working, electronics had issues, and no one could figure it out. They brought it back to Dodge and to Mobilecom, who installed all the equipment, and no one could figure it out. 118, my understanding, is more reliable than 218 was, but we're expecting that it's gonna have a significant increase in cost. So again, if we're expecting $6,000 this year in repairs for that car, we can get around $20,000 for 118. Again, please excuse me if that number is not 100%. It costs $31,000 to buy an Explorer that's on the lot right now, plus $17,000 to outfit. So you're at $48,000 minus 20. So it's going to cost $28,000 over 4 years.
Sure.
Right? That. If I'm expecting to spend $6,000 in repairs, I'd rather put that $6,000 towards a new car and save money over time. But in deference to accepted practice, the village is not in the business of replacing two police cars in a year, and we have to have a system of accountability where we're not just buying a new car just because.
Sure, I mean, but is there business you'd like us to consider to, we're here to discover and do research and make a recommendation to council on these matters. Is there something you'd like us to consider, or is this informational and we can, if we don't have further questions, we could
It's that I would
move on in the agenda?
I would just consider that thought of either one or two, and whatever you guys are comfortable with, whatever your recommendation is to council, I would accept, obviously, but that this is the information, and you guys make the recommendations.
So our major goal this evening was to get this in front of you, so you
Yeah, that's what I'm
understand
asking.
this issue is coming.
Yeah.
That being the case, I think there are best practices that probably need to be devised or refined in terms of what we're currently doing. So any input that you have, we would be glad to hear that. But I don't think there's any formal motion or anything that you.
No, I'm sorry,
Yeah, that's what I'm at.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No,
No,
we're
no,
trying
no,
to,
no.
we're trying to figure out, to know the money and what to expect for the future, not just right now.
And there
Right.
was one car in the budget?
One car in the budget. yes.
How much is that?
I didn't think we had one in the budget.
We have one car.
There
in the
is,
budget.
there is enough for a payment at
I
the
thought
end of
he
the
asked that
year.
question, he said no, okay.
What was that? We have a payment, we have in the
Okay.
budget, one extra payment at the end of the year for a car.
At the
How
end
much
of the
is
year,
How much?
I'm saying
Okay.
second half.
okay.
Sorry, what was
How
the
much?
question? $8,000.
That's
Okay.
just for the payment.
So I'm sorry, it's $8,000 is technically not enough to cover the payment. It would have to include the sale of
Oh.
the previous car. Once we have the sale of that previous car, then the money is technically covered for this year. Actually, it would be both payments this year. I apologize. It would be both payments this year and half of one payment next year from the sale of that car. But again, we have to appropriate that. That money's not appropriated because we weren't planning on selling this car. These repairs showed up in January on 118.
So what about the proceeds to the Avenger? Where's that going?
I would think that that goes towards the purchase of a new vehicle, but it's not my budget. You know, I don't make that
Well,
call.
if that was supposed to be sold to get Chief, or Captain Reed's car, is that not appropriated back to his cost?
No, nothing is appropriated back. There's receipts and there's appropriations. So whatever the receipts are, you can choose to reappropriate that money towards the purchase of the next thing. I mean, it was part of the calculation, but, you know, again, that money is mostly coming from the DEA fund. The historic practice has been that the DEA fund does not pay for cars, except for the chief's vehicle.
Yeah.
So that year, 2023, the DEA fund paid for that vehicle, but technically, out of the village coffers, the police levy and the general fund did not purchase a vehicle last year.
But when you say paid, like paid in full or paid like,
Is currently paying, yeah.
And the money that's currently in the budget is also from the DEA, or is it from
For that vehicle, that F-150, that Reed's F-150?
the one we might repurchase for, that we have in the
No,
budget
that would
currently
be
to
general fund
purchase?
and police levy. Actually, it's all general fund.
And do every year we have that amount in the, have we had, I know we haven't made next year's budget, but historically we had that amount in the budget
Historically, we
every
have
year.
more. Historically, we have more. We have had to cut about 25% of the police budget this year, just due to competitive salary increase. I mean, we can't compete with neighboring jurisdictions who are unfortunately taking some of our, I don't want to say some of our best guys because he left, but come on, I mean, he was a great guy, and it's, we're losing quality people because it's a very competitive market.
So last year we had money in the budget for a new car.
Yes.
What happened?
Oh, I'm sorry, you mean in the, last year we had,
2023.
we
when
didn't
bought
have money for an
rates.
additional car, we had more debt payments that we were making. We paid off,
the lease?
what did we pay off last year?
The Ram, I believe.
The Ram truck. So there was two payments that went towards the Ram truck last year, and that is no longer in the budget because it's been paid off. So the money for that did not go into this year's budget. Meaning there was no new car being paid, right? So that was reduced. I think I'm answering your question. I apologize. There was a little bit of, if I'm not, please ask me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to piece it all together a bit here.
I know personally for myself, this is gonna be something that like, I'm gonna have to like step back from, digest, probably ask more questions and then come back to. It's a lot.
So just a question out there, if we want to keep 216 for another year and get rid of 118, is that?
118, you're saying keep 216 and
Keep 216
And
and
sell
get rid
118.
of 118,
Yeah.
because 118 is being more of a burden on us than 216.
So again, that's all part of, I'm presenting you the information. There are two cars that according to statistics need to be replaced, but traditionally 216 has been more reliable. We rebuilt its transmission last year, so that's another thing that can't go wrong. But its engine has the equivalent of 750,000 miles on it, which is a lot. So if that dies, that's $10,000, right? A new engine on a Ford Explorer is $8,000 to $10,000. So we might be able to keep it another year. I don't know. I can just,
If I was to choose, because of the investment we made in 216, I would prefer to keep that one just because historically it's more reliable. Now, I know as soon as I say that, as soon as we decide.
Don't say it.
It's just how it works, but, the Durango, I mean, it's just,
It's also, I mean, you could make the argument also that Durango has, and again, this is all information I can put in the next report I do something like this. The Durango has a higher residual right now. The Durango's worth closer to 20,000, whereas 216 might be only worth 12 or 10. I don't know what the number is. So I don't know that we've gotten a quote. Might be worth 17 because it's a Ford, but a Ford with 83,000 miles and 29,500 hours on it. I have my suspicions it's not worth anywhere near what 118 is worth.
So, you know, we've discovered in previous meetings that we don't have a huge wiggle room in our budget, so I think it's kind of out of the question to purchase 2 cars, just, we have money for one, we can only purchase one. So, I mean, I would recommend keeping then 216, selling 118, selling the Avenger, using those proceeds along with the money in the budget to purchase the new car. And there we are.
That will make, I think that's something that you should look into, seeing if that's something.
I mean, that's definitely feasible.
That
The
makes
question
the
is,
most
the question is what, meaning, yes, you're correct, we don't have it in the budget. That's where the reserve is a question. Do we dip into the reserve to purchase another vehicle, knowing that that's going to be money that we'll probably end up having to spend on repairs, right? And that money gets reduced, meaning if we don't go through our repair budget of $9,000, so then that's money that we ended up not having to do.
Well, I think there's 2 things. There's a certain, we don't have the money in the budget, and there may be repairs. And of course, Jenny would love to keep things, you know, everything brand new, everything perfect, but money doesn't come out of thin air. So there are difficult decisions that have to be made.
Again,
Yeah.
that's the purpose of the presentation.
Yeah.
You guys get to make those decisions, not me. I can just simply show you what the statistics
We can make recommendations to council.
Yeah.
We also
And
have
our-
information on the service vehicles, because we've really only been talking about the police vehicles.
Correct. So I can talk about the service vehicles if you want. We can move into that.
But do we
I
need
think
3 of those, what about?
I mean, there is definitely information to speak about on that. That's
If you could do it in 1 minute, give us a synopsis.
I can
We're gonna
give you a
continue
quick
this
synopsis.
conversation, so just give us a
so
quick.
so service vehicles of report are 3. There's 213, 219, and 222. 219 and 222 are fairly new trucks. There's no issue with them. They are in service. They work for leaves. They work for roads. Everything's great. 213 is coming up on 11 years. Service life for that vehicle is 12 years. It is scoring low. I happen to have personally seen the amount of rust that is in the front axle and suspension of that vehicle. I'm not super excited about it, but again, it is a current working serviceable vehicle. It has a decent residual at this point. The recommendation is after 12 years to take a vehicle like that out of service. That comes out of a different budget. We have a permissive motor vehicle license fund, which comes specifically for the service. That comes from the state of, actually, that comes from your taxpayer money that whenever you register your vehicle. That is a significant amount of the service budget that would not touch our general fund to replace that vehicle. So that is not really a fund that we have to worry about as much because it's coming from the state and it's coming from local taxes. I'm referring to 2 funds for the service. So
Which you would recommend replacement of that vehicle.
the service department is asking for the replacement. According to the points, it does not qualify. According to its age, it is just at that point. I believe their request was that it should be included in the 2025 budget. That's all.
Thank you.
And that vehicle was our primary salt truck.
And what are we using now? That's the vehicle
Still
we're
in?
still using?
Yeah, it's working fine. I mean, it's just towards the end of its life. That's all. That's the big
It
dump
did a
truck.
good job on the street this time.
Yes, it did.
Okay, thank you for that. I think this is a lot that we could think about and definitely continue next time with our decisions on how we would like to move forward with it. Our next meeting will be February 5th at 7 p.m. I put forth a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your service.
We're clear?